Welcome to Moss Marketing Mondays, a.k.a. the M3 Podcast. Brought to you by Moss Marketing Group, bringing you everything marketing every Monday. Stay tuned for marketing tips and tricks you can use today. The M3 Podcast, marketing knowledge to help you succeed. Let's get started.
Welcome back to the M3 Podcast. This week, Ricky and I have Frank Termini on.
Glad to be here.
Thank you for being here.
This is so awesome.
He's already nice and reclined and ready for it all. He's
I kind of feel cool, feel important.
You look cool.
Got coffee.
Yeah.
I
mean, we're all about the customer service around here.
right.
He had to make his own coffee because I don't use creamer, but
that's true. We offered.
Yeah.
Right. That's all that matters. So, what's M3? Tell me what that. You're probably supposed to be asking me questions.
No,
I'm going to go ahead and start this deal out. So, M3.
It's Moss Marketing Mondays.
Moss Marketing Mondays.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Okay.
we have Moss Marketing Group, and then we wanted something that twisted off of Moss Marketing Group, and it's crazy the evolution kind of too of the podcast. When it started off, it was very marketing structured all the time, and we had people reaching out all the time like, we want to know these people's stories more. We want to know like a lot more. Like, I feel like it's became more podcast style.
Oh, definitely. I'm trying to think of the last time we talked about marketing now.
It's normally just on the Moss Marketing Group ones.
We talked a little bit about YouTube with Levi.
True.
I would say that would be it.
So, the space that you initially started in would have been the automotive space. Is that correct?
Correct. That's where I started at.
Well, but even the marketing component, correct?
Yeah. So when I was in the automotive space, I got into marketing. I don't have a background in college or anything like that in marketing.
Right.
And I just became very intrigued with the amount of opportunities that are out there, especially in the digital space, and how you could acquire more work and make more money if you're just willing to put in the work and willing to go out and do these things and think differently than someone else, and how to put product out in front of someone differently, how to tell a story via marketing. So it kind of came to me, and then everywhere I went, people were like, who does your marketing? I was like, I do it. Like, you do ours? I'm like, no, I can't.
Probably not.
And then this happened. So fast forward a little bit.
How diverse are you now? So you were doing sales strictly for the automotive industry, and now how diverse is your portfolio, would you say?
We have 90-something companies in Kansas City we work with.
Really?
And we have restaurants, we have car dealerships, we have kids parks, we have jewelry stores, we have...
I was at the grocery store today, and I was buying some like fruit for some props for a product photo shoot we did earlier. And I told the guy, or he asked, and I was like, oh, we work at a marketing company. And I was like, oh, who do you market for? And I was like, quite a few different things. I realized when I was saying it just sounded like it was all over the place. Car dealerships, knife company, boutiques, all kinds of stuff.
Yes, service companies, landscape companies, it's our funnel process that when I got into this, I thought the car market was just out of whack.
Right.
I was like, that's what's out of whack. It's just the car market. That's what I knew. And then I started dabbling in these like other business models, and everyone in the marketing space is like, you need to be honed in on one type of business, and that's it. And I go, but the process works across every business I've helped. And then it became something where I enjoy working with business owners on scaling businesses and how to scale businesses to acquire more work. If that is selling more product, if that is having more service go out, whatever that is, I understand scalability, and the biggest factor in scalability is marketing.
Right.
So once you figure that out, it was just something that process has worked with everyone we work with. So then I was like, I'm open to anything.
Sure.
And it just kind of fanned out pretty quick. But,
That's good.
And
That's good.
then it's gotten us into podcasting and content creation and all this other stuff, and just broadening that network all the time.
So what's the common denominator of, the type of person, or what is making you think, oh, hey, I want to ask this guy to be on the podcast?
It's a lot of people like that I meet And like we talk at the gym all the time. You know, something that I feel like majority of all people that come on the podcast, they have it factor. Like, and it's something I've just always read in people, like when they have it factor. That's why you're an entrepreneur. That's why you went out and owned a company. That's why, like, those people just have something to them.
Right.
And everybody gravitates to those kind of people. And when you, I don't know, I've a lot of times, a lot of people have came on the podcast. It's network of people I've met, different things of that nature. And people want to know a story. People want to know what got you into doing what you're doing. What is that why factor of you went out and did that? What made you take that step? Because there's a lot of people that are standing on that ledge to take that step that are too nervous.
Sure.
That I was.
Well, you can't be afraid to fail.
No, you can't.
Just, I mean, if you'll never do anything, right? So that's probably the first thing I would like if I'm talking to my kids, you know, and I'm trying to teach them a life lesson. I would probably tell them, hey, not only don't be afraid to fail, but embrace it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because the first clinic I opened up failed miserably.
Yeah.
I mean, it went belly up, and I think it went belly up in like 3 or 4 months. It was just a horrible idea. You know, it was but, I mean, I also learned a ton from that experience.
Oh, for sure.
You know, and so it cost me, I don't know, 10, 12 grand. Okay, but the education piece from it was like, well, yeah, that's priceless, right?
Well, I feel like there's so many kids that go to business to go get a degree in business and step out of college and are $100,000 in debt and know fucking nothing about business.
Nothing. Here, I knew nothing about business. I knew as much about business as a business major.
Yeah.
And I was, you know, and I majored in, you know, biology and, you know, I had a chemistry minor, you know. So,
oh, my God. There's another scientist on the couch.
It is.
you know, so, you know, but I didn't know anything about, and I fucked up terribly.
Yeah.
I mean, and I look, and I said this to a couple friends of mine, and I'm like, by the grace of God, you know, I'm still in business, and they came in and they were, you know, kind of examining the business. Guy's way smarter than I am, you know, and he called me up and he goes, you know what you said, by the grace of God, you weren't kidding, you know. So, but I just always kind of feel like, for me, it's like, here, if I'm out and I'm grinding and I'm doing it for the right purpose, that it's just gonna work out, and it did.
Yeah, I feel the same way a lot of times, and I feel like there's a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners that I speak to that that early path was not easy, and I think so many people look at business owners like, oh, it's fucking cake.
No, it's brutal. It's brutal. It's brutal.
I tell people all the time about, like, I had it one time since I've started this where it was the day before payday that I had no earthly idea how I was going to pay everyone.
Right.
Like,
and if anyone ain't getting paid, it's you.
I still, today, I don't take checks from this company.
Right.
Like, it's something I put everything back into it. I was fortunate enough to position myself before starting this to have money set aside. I've also been fortunate enough that Madison does very well on her side too.
Right.
To where personally I haven't had to worry about the finance side.
Right.
But as a company, I remember, earlier this year, I was like, shit, how do I pay people? And I learned as a business owner in the beginning, I was like, I'm going to do all payments in the rear. It's going to be great. And in the beginning, it wasn't that big a deal when I had like 4, 5, 6, 10 accounts. All of a sudden, I hit like 30 accounts. And then people haven't sent their money to us. And one day, I look at my brother, I'm like, dude, there's like $150,000, $200,000 owed to me that I don't have.
Right.
And I'm like, there's money, but it's not here to write checks out.
Yeah. Try getting a letter from Medicare one day saying, hey, we ain't paying anyone for the first quarter. 25% of your business says, I'm just not going to pay anyone for Q1. No reason, just not doing it.
Yeah.
Right? That's when you're on the phone with one of your buddies and you're like, I need to borrow some, I need to borrow some money.
I'm sitting there, I'm like, and the world works the way it's supposed to, and it's the day before payday, and I'm just going to pull out all my personal money to start paying people.
So I had to take a home equity line of credit.
Yeah. So I'm sitting there about to do that. I'm like, tomorrow morning I'm hitting the bank on the way in, pull money and start getting people paid. Yeah. And I go home, I open up my mailbox, and there's like $60,000 worth of checks in my mailbox.
Right.
I'm like, holy shit. I'm like in my driveway. I want to get down on my hands and knees and like kiss my driveway. I'm like, and everyone's like, no, it's so fucking easy. I'm like, I was breaking down in my truck 30 seconds ago.
And I've been there.
And
I mean, there was times where like, Michelle and I on a Friday night, we would go have dinner and we would sit there and I wouldn't even talk.
Yeah.
Maybe, something went on with one of my referral sources, one of my referring docs, maybe a patient got pissed off for whatever reason. And I'm fumbling around all this stuff in my head. And in the meantime, my wife and I go to dinner, and we don't even speak to each other. And she's trying to pull things out of me, but I just can't get out of my head.
Yeah.
And that really went on for 12 years. The whole time I was in business, because once I got myself settled, then I was like, okay, let's add another location.
Exactly.
And then I'd get settled again, and then, well, let's add another.
Time for another one.
Right. And then I had 4 locations.
Yeah.
I had 4 locations at one point, and I'm just like, oh my, and a home health agency that serviced, 5 counties, right? So, there was always something,
But I think that's also when it comes to, we talk about it all the time with business owners, that I feel entrepreneurs find happiness in progression. Like, you have to have like, a lot of people would probably make it to where we're at right now and say, hey, you know what? You guys are good coasting. Like, we can all have a nice life. We can make decent money. Life's good. And it's like, I come in and I'm trying to 10X the company by next December. And I'm like, what do I have to front? I'm like, I will pull everything. I'll put my life, whatever dollars and cents I have to my name, I'll put it up to make this work.
Right. No, I get it. It's almost like an addict.
100%.
Well, because, you look like at a gambler. Gambler don't really care about winning and losing. They just want the action.
Exactly.
Right. And a business owner, it's like, it's almost the same way.
I was walking into my pantry like this morning, and I had like all these thoughts going through my head of like everything. And I'm like, I feel like, what is the difference between like somebody that's addicted to gambling and what I do?
It's the same thing. It's not being a bit. You're gambling.
Yeah.
The only thing you're doing is taking a little bit more of a calculated risk, and you're gambling on yourself.
Yeah.
You control the odds a little bit more. Usually.
Yeah, you can. You can control the odds a little bit more. Not a lot more, but a little bit more.
You can at least do things to put it in your favor.
Yeah, right.
I feel like at roulette, if we're playing red, black, it's what, 50-50 plus our green, so I don't know what the total number comes out to. I feel like we have a lot better than a 50-50.
Yeah, for sure.
I feel like we're at like a 90-10 now. I'm like, as long as we're executing, and that's like a big thing that I have learned in the space, if you're actively getting after it all the time, you're 25 steps in front of the next person.
Sure.
Like, everyone else is fucking sleeping, not doing shit. And you're up, like, getting it all day, every day. Right. And they're like, how are you guys finding the success you are? I'm like, what were you doing at 5:30? Oh, you were in bed? What were you doing at 8:30?
Right.
Oh, still in fucking bed.
Right.
What were you doing at 9:30? I was thinking about getting out of bed. Oh, okay, great. Like,
right.
I'd already done more than you did the whole entire day by that time.
Right.
What were you doing at 5 o'clock? Well, I left at 4. Oh, well, we were getting ready for a podcast at that time. What were you doing at 8? Oh, yeah, we were still working. Yeah. So I just did in a day what it took you to do in a week.
Yeah.
So it's like, if you're progressing, you're working, you're doing that stuff, it's pretty easy to out-hustle everyone around.
This day and age, it's real easy to out-hustle someone.
Yes.
Because there's so many people who are just comfortable just punching that clock in and out and going home. And honestly, there's a lot to say for it.
Sometimes I've looked
I'm
at
jealous
Mass,
of them.
I've looked at Mass and we've sat at those dinners and stuff on Friday, and I am just gassed.
Yeah.
I'm like, it has been from 5:30 to 11 o'clock at night all week long, and I'm sitting there, I'm just like, and I'm like, I'm really jealous of some of those people that get to go home at 5.
So I coach high school football, too.
Yes.
I started 3 years ago. And Friday nights after the games, the coaches, they'll go drinking. I can't get home fast enough. I'm so tired when it's because, I mean, you figure I start at 5:30. By the time I go pick my son up from football, it's 8 o'clock, get him home, showered, bathed, all that stuff fed. My day goes from 5:30 in the morning to 9:30 at night, Monday through Thursday until 10:30, 11 on Friday.
Yeah.
I mean, and then Michelle's coaching volleyball.
Yep.
Right? So, I mean,
You guys don't have anything going on.
no, right. Yeah. Right.
Sounds pretty chill.
Yeah. So, and then you got, who's in volleyball, who's in dance, who's in football, and we're in 10 different places at the same time.
Well, it was funny. I had kind of a turning point. I had Tony Cardello on, and when Tony was on, he sat there and he was talking about, because I would see him at the gym when I was getting there, and he was leaving.
Right. No, that dude's there at like 5 in the morning.
Oh, he was getting there at, like, I was going at like 5:30, and he's leaving. I'm like, bro, when the fuck you get here? He's like, I'm getting up at 3:30. I'm doing that. I'm like, how? I'm like, this dude's nuts.
Yeah.
And so I'm like going through all this, and when he was on the podcast, he was talking about how he has all these people, and they talk about being up at night and not being able to sleep and everything.
Oh, shit.
He goes, bro. He goes, by the time I touch my bed, he goes, I can't keep my eyes open.
No.
He goes, if you get home and you can't physically stay awake, he goes, you didn't give it enough.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy shit. I was making excuses like, I could do more. Like,
you got to take a nap so you can take a shower.
Exactly. And it was funny, like, when you kind of put it that way, I'm like, I didn't really think of that. I'm like, yeah, I guess I haven't been putting in enough. I'm not working hard enough.
And I'm really cool until I sit down.
Yeah.
That's my, but if I sit down, that's why I got to drink coffee right now while I'm sitting here, right? But other than that, I'm all right. If I go, I'm fine.
Yeah.
I either go or I sleep. That's there's no like relaxation, component for me.
I can't even remember the last time I like laid in a bed and like tried to fall asleep.
Never.
You know what I mean?
No. I was probably in my 20s, and it was probably
like I try to read every night before I go to bed, and I get through like maybe a half a page, and then the book's like falling on my face. And I'm like, all right, time to go to bed.
Last time I was probably in my 20s and drank Red Bull with vodka or something.
Yeah.
Where you think you're drunk, and then you go home and you can't sleep.
Right. Holy shit, why am I so awake?
Maybe
it's all the Red Bull I just drank.
I just drank, a gallon of Red Bull.
Yeah, it's beginning of the year I was that way. And it was crazy that at the beginning of the year I wasn't giving it as much as I could. I'd sit in bed and I had my notepad that I keep over there if I would sit there awake. Massa wants the TV off, so I'm just sitting there. I'm like, thoughts are going through my head. I'm like, holy shit. I'm like, I'm pretty much like Albert Einstein at that point in the night. And then I look at what I wrote down, like, what the fuck was I thinking?
Yeah, right. I've done that.
Doesn't even make sense.
I've done that. Yeah.
I'm like reading. I'm like, what in the world?
And you wake up at 3 in the morning. You got that problem figured out.
I know. You got figured out. Dude, this is dialed in. You're like, look. I'm like, no, I guess I didn't have that dialed in.
This is gonna work perfect. Yeah. And then you execute, and you're like, oh no, this is a terrible idea.
So, what got you into the line of work that you're in? When did that all start, and what led you to that?
So when I was a freshman in college, I was fortunate enough to get to play football at Benedictine College. It's a NAIA Division II, I believe, is what it is. And Coach Griggs, he was the head football coach at Pius my freshman and sophomore year, and then my junior and senior year it was Byers. But Griggs took the head baseball coach and the quarterback coach at Benedictine. Well, when we all became seniors, there was like 4 of us that he came back and he's like, hey, you guys are going to come play at Benedictine. And we go up there, and we got up there on like a Thursday. And that following Saturday, we were supposed to play in some bowl game against Sioux Falls, Iowa, some school in Iowa. I can't even remember. I blow my damn knee out, tear my ACL. There was a sprinkler head. And it came up and kind of would water the field, and then it would go back down and leave a little divot. And my foot got caught, my body went forward, and that was my upper body went forward, my lower body didn't move. And here, a funny story. I tear my ACL, my knee's blown up like a balloon, and at that time, no one really even knew anyone's name. I was just known as the screaming motherfucker because I literally screamed bloody murder. I remember wanting to pass out. It hurt so bad. So now I'm in the top floor of St. Augustine Hall, and there's no elevator in the building. I'm naked. I'm in a community shower, and the RA comes up, and he's like, you got to go. We got a gas leak. I'm like, come on, man. You're kidding me right now. Huge knee, all swelled up. Anyway, so I have surgery and rehab it for 9 months, and it's good to go. I'm ready to go out and play again. And I come out. We're probably, I don't know, 2-3 months into the season, and I go to make a cut on it, and I just fell. And I'm like, man, that's weird. I didn't have any pain, but I just bit the dust. And, coach screaming, hollering at me, and, makes me run the play again. Same play, go to plant on my right leg, and just fall. They walk me over to the hospital. Damn thing's torn again. So I end up having to have another surgery and tons of physical therapy with both surgeries. And that, I think, is what sparked my interest in the field. You know what I mean? Because, as an athlete, you kind of lose your identity when that happens to you. Because I played football since I was 9. And once that was taken away, it was like, okay, now what am I?
We were having a discussion before this. I have a guy that's about to start a podcast, everything of that nature, and he works with predominantly all NFL players and NBA players. And one of his deals was these guys have worked since they were 4 years old to make it to that pro level. And a lot of them figure out real quick how short that career is, that when that ends, it's like they have no earthly idea what to do.
Right.
He's like, they've trained their whole entire lives for that. And then you can be a NFL player and your career be done by 25.
Sure.
Yeah.
And at 25,
you're a baby.
Yeah. Like, you still have so much life in front of you. And they were like, well, shit, what do I do now?
Right. No.
Like, I've just used my whole entire life to make it to this one point, and now what?
Right. And I knew, there was one guy from Benedictine that ever went to the NFL.
Which I think it's better almost for that to happen to you in college than further on.
Well, yeah. I mean, I wasn't going anything further than college. I mean, like I said, it wasn't. I mean, if you're not playing, big time NCAA D1, you're probably not going to the NFL.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty hard to try to convince a lot of people that at D2 schools, that I went to a D2 school and every guy that played football there thought he was a NFL prospect.
Right.
I'm like, bro, you know how many D1 players out there that aren't getting drafted?
97% of them? Like, what's it, 3% that get to go to the NFL? So, yeah, I mean, it's crazy. But I will say this, Benedictine had some really, really stud athletes.
Yeah.
It's like some of them I would be looking at like, man, what do you have to do to go play Division I football?
Like, how is that guy not playing?
For real.
D1?
And now as a coach, I kind of figured it out. These recruiters will gamble on 6'4", 220. Because if they lose, their job is still be intact.
Yeah.
But if you gamble on 5'9", if you gamble
risky.
on 5'9" and lose,
Yeah.
you got problems.
Yeah.
know.
You saw that one coming.
Right, I mean, so I mean, you better be able to run like a 4.3, which I didn't even come close to. But so that's kind of what sparked my interest in it, and those are the I mean, I see all different types of patients, right? I see everything from an adolescent to an elderly person that fractured their hip, but I've always tend to thrive and to gravitate toward your athletes, which is why, when Simone got the head job at Pius, and I was all fired up, I thought, this is great. It's like, yeah, can I just come to the workouts and just work out with the team? And he goes, well, actually,
You want to be
you're
a coach?
going to be the strength and conditioning coach. And I was like, oh, so I was so fired up for that, to just really dive into that and just have had a blast doing it. But those are the type of people and diagnoses that I will gravitate toward.
I think that's also probably very, fulfilling to get to work with the youth and get to do that.
For me, it's awesome. I mean, I love the opportunity to change the trajectory of a kid, kid's path. And and honestly, kids at Pius, they're all really, really good kids.
Yeah.
They really are. But if I could just, share some perspective with them and help them, get to where I am spiritually more than anything, without having to go through the shit that I put myself through.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Uh-huh.
And even, some of those kids that, maybe have no desire to have any type of relationship with Jesus, to just, maybe change that.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And if I get to coach football while I'm doing it, well, that's right on. That's
That
awesome.
all works out perfect.
Yeah.
And I think it's big that we talk about all the time, getting like help others. That I feel that brings a lot of fulfillment to people,
Sure.
as a whole. And what better time to get I feel like as a high schooler playing football, that is like, you look up to these coaches as like, they're like gods almost.
Sure.
Of like what they're telling you. And it's a crucial time, I feel like, in a man's life to have figures there that like I had a very strong father figure my whole life. I still do. And he still tells me how to run my business every single day and everything of that nature.
Yeah.
But it's like I very much respect his advice on everything.
100%.
And he has a way longer track record than I do and has learned way more than I know.
Sure.
So when I started this, I'm like, we were talking about the payments in the rear. Like, he told me not to do that. I'm like, Dad, you don't know what you're talking about. Then all of a sudden, it like kicks me in the nuts. I'm like, oh, I should have listened to him. Like,
Here,
hey.
I'll tell you this. I didn't realize that my dad knew everything until I was about 30. So you got about another 2 years, and then it'll hit you like a ton of bricks.
Oh, it's hit me now that
Yeah.
it's when he says those things at 16, 16 to 18, I mean, I knew everything. Like,
Sure.
nobody could tell me.
We all did.
Yeah, yeah.
And, but by this time, it's like came full circle back around. I'm like, okay, he does know what he's talking about on this.
Oh, man.
And
Yeah, my dad, you know, I'm like you. I was really fortunate. You know, I had my dad, my mom, they were, you know, married till my dad passed away. And, you know, my dad was, I couldn't have asked to have been influenced by a better person. Than, you know, I was really fortunate. He was a very, very good man.
yeah.
And, you know, so it was really, I was just fortunate, you know. But I also had, you know, some really good coaches.
Oh, 100%.
You know, and a coach will influence you a lot as well, you know.
For sure.
Especially when your dad's telling you, hey, listen to what he says and just shut up. You
Yeah,
know?
which my dad pretty much like, I played under Coach Jones at Kearney, and like that dude was as hard as they came. Like,
You know, I got to listen to him on a podcast. That's
Yeah.
funny you brought him up, you know, because and that's kind of when I realized, I'm like, hey, wait a second. There's some people out there that, you know, don't necessarily have an athletic training background and don't necessarily have a physical therapy background, and they're doing a real good job at the strength and conditioning
Oh,
stuff.
100%.
And he's one of them.
oh, dude is just like,
yeah.
but, like, I mean, he's at Oregon now. If he comes back to KC, I'm getting him on the podcast for sure.
Yeah, right.
But I mean, he was so hardcore, and like the parents were just like, go for it, do your thing.
right.
There's 90-something kids that were kids at that point playing football. And when you walked into that weightlifting room and you walked out to like people conditioning, there wasn't a single person slacking.
Sure.
There wasn't. Like, it was just, you knew the wrath of Coach Jones. Like, if you weren't giving it 100%.
Right.
But that's why he had state champion football teams all the time.
Wherever he went.
And it was like, it transferred like wherever he stood.
Yeah. No.
But there was a higher level of respect for the guy too.
yeah.
That we were friends with other coaches and thing, and people like, you were kind of friends with Coach Jones, but you weren't like on a, like, I would go, like, you go in there and mess with him.
He had more of an ethical presence.
Yeah, he was like,
Right. Yeah. No, I
if he
get it.
came in at halftime and he ripped the team a new asshole, like, he would cuss up a storm that if it ever hit, like, public channels, it would go viral overnight.
Right.
But then he would come in Monday and he'd do push-ups for every single cuss word he said.
Right.
So literally the whole entire weightlifting Monday morning, he'd be doing push-ups the whole time.
Right.
And, but it was just like crazy on
Yeah.
the way he did it, and it was
I think a good head coach, like, because Simone is the same way. Us assistant coaches will be sitting around, jacking around, laughing, giggling. All of a sudden, Simone will walk in the room. Everybody's face changes. And then he'll look at you and go, what? Because he knows he missed something, right?
oh shit, Dad's here. I feel like it's almost like you have like a group of kids with like another group of kids. It's like a little bit more of a pyramid type deal.
Yeah.
But then like the top walks and you're like, oh.
Yeah. And there's a couple guys that'll, like a couple of our, because it's a really unique atmosphere because all of the coaches are Pius alum, and there's probably, 5 of us that have known each other for 30 plus years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I have not got the stones to bust his chops when he's in a bad mood. But there's a couple of them that'll do it still.
Yeah, that's right. If anybody ever even thought about crossing, like, I never saw it the years I played for Coach Jones. Like, when he was mad, nobody even thought about busting his balls.
Yeah. So it's funny. I mean, like, if you ever could, like, listen in on our headsets on during a game, oh, my God. It's. I wish I could go back and listen to some of the stuff that's said. I mean, it's funny. It really is funny.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's huge what I think coaches in general, like your wife coaching volleyball and everything like that. I mean, you guys get to help with a lot of those different forefronts, and then, I mean, it correlates over into your business of what you do also.
Sure.
So,
Well, it's not really much different. You as a business owner, or even if you're not an owner and you're you're managing people. You still have to be able to motivate. You're not doing much different at work than you would be on the field, except you can't grab their face mask and get nose to nose with them.
I'm gonna put helmets.
I think
on
we should
everyone. I think we should put helmets on everyone.
But I mean, it's one of the most fulfilling things I've done.
So, with that correlating into business also, and you running a business as long as you did and scaling a business to multiple locations, what were some of the biggest obstacles you had to overcome at scale, when it came to scaling, getting multiple locations, doing all of that?
My problem is I'm a fire ready aim dude. You know what I mean? So then I would always have myself in a situation where I couldn't afford to fail.
Yeah.
Right? So I didn't necessarily put myself in positions to succeed. I put myself in situations where I couldn't afford to fail. I mean, even with the home health agency, all the clinics, all of a sudden I'm overexpanded, I'm undercapitalized, I'm borrowing money off my damn house. My wife's pissed off at me, I mean, and I think that because at the end of the day, I didn't have any money.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I started the business on a $10,000 loan from a cousin, right? I had a 600 square foot space with me and a computer. That was it. And I was working another job. I was doing home health for Gentiva while I opened up Core Physical Therapy, right? And then all of a sudden, it was 6 months. That's all it took. And I was seeing 100 patients a week, out of this little 600 square foot space. So I don't even have time to do home health anymore. So I had to quit that job, So now my safety net's gone.
Yeah.
But
I think sometimes it's good to cut that safety net.
I had no choice.
I feel like when you cut that was the car business. It's something that you can't run the car business parallel with anything. You don't have time. I ran a detail company and I cleaned cars from 8 to midnight Monday through Thursday. It was fucking terrible.
Right.
It was the most terrible thing ever. What people don't realize is for 2 years I had dinner if I ate with Madison, my brother, anyone, Monday through Thursday, it was in the service drive of the dealership, and it was normally Buffalo Wild Wings. Right. And people were like, "Oh, life's great. You have a nice house. You have all this stuff." I'm like, "My life sucks."
right.
I'm like, "I will trade you any week you want."
Well, here, how about when you forget to even pay yourself when you can? My wife would call me and she'd be like, "Frank T, I'm at the grocery store and I can't get any damn groceries." She's all mad. The debit card won't work. And luckily, the second space, my first time we expanded from a 600 square foot space to a 1,200 square foot space. It was in UMB Bank. And I would run over into the other suite and write a check into my personal account so Michelle could pay for the damn groceries.
It's funny, as business gets to rolling, I don't even think of personal stuff.
Right. You forget to pay yourself.
And granted, most people don't know, but I don't take payment from Moss Marketing Group. I haven't. I put everything back into scale. But it's one of those things that I don't even think about personal. I have set everything up on auto withdrawal. I don't want to think about missing a payment on anything. I don't want to think about that stuff.
Right.
I am 400% on scale. Driving I tell them all the time we're on a train that's going really, really fast and it's trying to steer it, make sure it doesn't fall off the tracks.
Yeah.
That is my job. Everyone's shoveling coal in the fire as fast as they can. This thing's going faster and faster and faster. So just make sure we don't fall off.
Right. Well, I mean, I could expand on that question all night. Because I got to the point where, because I was working, I had opened up the home health agency, and I also had Core Physical Therapy. And whenever I would spend a bunch of time at Core Physical Therapy, the home health agency would start to dip, and then my partner at the home health agency would be like, "Hey, come on, we need you over here," So then I would switch, and I would start doing the home health agency, and then the outpatient clinic would start to slip, and I'm sitting there playing this, game back and forth until now the bottom's giving out.
Yeah.
Now the bottom's giving out, and I'll never forget it. I'm sitting there, and I drive. I go in reverse. I'm driving down the street, and I'm praying, and I'm like, "Look, I'll close this outpatient clinic. God, just tell me what you want me to do. I can't keep living this way." I was literally driving myself crazy.
Yeah.
And I'm praying, and I get a phone call. By the time I'm 100 yards away, I get a phone call, and it's my buddy Chuck Cute. I don't know if you know who Chuck is. and he calls me up, and he's like, come meet me at the office. So I drive to his office and make a deal with him. He injects money into my account. He, clears up all the debt and, takes care of everything. And I was able to pay him off. We were partners for a while, and then I ended up buying him out, But I was ready to shut the doors.
Yeah.
I was ready to shut the doors for the outpatient clinic,
And it's crazy. I feel like when those things happen, that once again, everything happens for a reason. The world works in crazy ways, that verticals open out of nowhere. And somebody, like, anytime that you feel like you're struggling and you feel like the whole world is crumbling down, whatever it is as a business owner, people don't realize that there's hundreds and there's thousands of people watching you, like, looking up to you of like what you're doing.
Sure.
And sometimes you're like, hey, it's not as glorious as
it's not.
You think it is over here.
It's not when you're driving in your car half in tears, wondering if you're going to close the damn business.
Yeah, you're like, oh my God. And it's like, I'm like, why do I, like, in the earlier days, I'm like, why am I putting myself through this? I'm like, what is the outcome? And then like I have Madison, which she's really good at like grounding me and bringing me back to like reality.
That's Michelle.
And she goes, you work for yourself. She goes, on your worst days, is it still better than the days when you're at the dealership?
Sure.
I go, hell yeah, it is like it is. I'm like, yeah, it's way better than those days. And she's like, always remember that. She goes, it's always better. Like on any day, she goes, just look back at where you were.
Yeah, and Michelle talks me off the ledge a lot too.
Yeah.
Because we started in January of 2011. Gianna was born in May. And then my dad died that August, and then 12 months later, I have twins. So now I got these 3 babies that are in diapers. Michelle's got the 2 older ones from a previous marriage. I got 5 kids in the house, and then you're still carrying the weight of your business, And
I don't know how people do it with kids. Like I am at a spot where it was funny. I sat down at a marketing meeting, like when I first opened, and these people were like looking at me like trying to buy Moss Marketing Group pretty much and like wanting all of us to like come work there. I was like, absolutely not. And this is like in the early days, like, oh, you guys are like on the forefront of what you're doing, blah, blah, blah. And like keeps kind of like pushing that forward. And I was like, they're like, well, your scalability, they start talking on that. And I'm like, well, I go, how many hours you guys put in a day? Or do you have to leave, go pick up kids? And I start like adding all this stuff up. I'm like, I almost have the same amount of people as you. We don't have to do any of those things. Right. And they're like, look at me. I'm like, we get like 3 times the amount of work done that you guys get done. I go, and it's not a bad thing, but it's just one of those things that like we don't, realistically, we have a couple people now that have kids.
Right.
But the majority of us, it's just still a pretty young group. And I'm very much of like, put in the time now. Let's capitalize now for when that time comes, we're able to have our time.
It's a smart move. No, I mean, like when I was 28, I was 2 years out of school. I was 2 years out of PT school.
Yeah.
So I didn't know shit, and I had a really good mentor, Frank Termini. I worked for him for, 4 years, brilliant business owner, good, brilliant PT. I kind of took his playbook. Is really what I did. And then I just ran with it. I had a non-compete with him, which is why I did home health for 2 years, which then I was educated in that space, which once the outpatient clinic was stabilized, which what I thought was stabilized, right, then I ventured into that space as well. But, I wanted to have autonomy, you know what I mean? But then I ended up having less autonomy than my damn employees had.
Yeah.
I
don't know. I think sometimes as that top person that I tell everyone all the time, those are my problems to take on.
Sure.
Like that's my job. When you look at a business, everyone glorifies like the owner or whatever, which most of the time is the most glorified spot to have.
Right.
Which there's times when it's great, but then the times when it's bad, it's worse it's the worst spot to be in.
Sure.
But I am very big, and I talked to my brother about it, probably only him. that when things are bad, I'm like, nobody would ever know.
Sure.
Like, I'm like, I got that handled.
Right.
Nobody would ever know. And like that time when I didn't know how to make payroll happen, there wasn't a soul on the planet that knew about that.
Right.
Except for me.
Right.
And I'm opening up that account like every hour. I'm like, I don't know where the money's going to pop up from, but I'm going to keep looking at it. I'm like,
maybe if I refresh enough times.
Maybe it's not refreshed or something. I don't know.
Maybe there's a
happening.
zero
Like,
missing.
Yeah.
But like, it was just one of those things that I went to the bank. I didn't put it all in. I was like, how much of this will clear straight up so I can write checks today?
Right.
And they're like, well, if you put it in your personal account, because your guys' personal accounts have the money, it'll clear straight in. Then you could transfer it over. I'm like, all right, whatever you have to do, like get it in here. I got to go write checks right now.
Yeah.
And
I know all about it.
nobody would have known that. But it's like at that time, I feel like I had the whole entire weight of the world on my shoulders.
Sure.
And that's no one else's problem to have but mine.
Right.
I signed up for this problem to have.
Right.
So I signed up to take on those and make sure it's no one else's issue.
Sure. Yeah.
I think a lot of people don't like really pay attention to that, and they think that it's just all rainbows and dandelions over
and it's not
in the entrepreneur space.
No, it's definitely not. It's definitely not. But
I'm hoping one day I find that field.
yeah. Yeah. No, I guarantee it. But it is rewarding, you know. The people I work for, Select Physical Therapy, they're the ones that, you know, bought Core. I love it. It's awesome. They're great. The guys that are ahead of me and the people that I answer to are awesome. You know, they understand that I've owned my own business for 12 years. They haven't taken any autonomy away from me. And then I simultaneously respect the fact that I'm now an employee. So, you know, it just works.
Yeah.
You know, they respect the fact that I worked for myself for 12 years. I respect the fact that I now work for them. And, you know, it just works. You know, like the other day, I wake up and I have this huge sty. I mean, it's killing me. It's going all the way in to like the temple, you know, and I'm like, this thing hurts like hell. So I called my manager and I'm like, dude, I got to go to the doctor. He's like, just go. Don't worry about it. You know,
Yeah.
I'm like, really? He's like, yeah, just go. Don't worry about it. I'm like, oh, great. This is easier than I thought, you know?
I think that's kind of an issue just in work in general, and I'm a big advocate of it here, that too many people are married to a job, and their life revolves around a job, and it revolves around having no freedom. I'm very much for people having freedom. Like, we don't time punch cards around here. If somebody needs a day, like, great. Like, if you're going on vacation, take a vacation. We don't have paid days. Like, I run salary plus like commission base and bonuses and everything like that. But I want people to enjoy their fucking lives. Like, enjoy yourself. Like, it shouldn't just be the person at the top gets to enjoy themselves.
Sure.
Everyone should.
Right.
Like,
No, I get that.
That's why I was really big on the office space. Like, I was really big on everyone enjoying where they work.
Right.
Like,
Probably more productive.
yeah, it's more productive. When people are working, they're very productive. I want people to take a break and go down and have lunch, walk around the market and come up and play ping pong. And I have Call of Duty on the TVs around here. Like, whatever, enjoy your time. I don't know where this shift was or it's been like it, but as people just live to work, and then hopefully someday you get to retire, then you get to enjoy your life for a couple of years, and then you go. Like, that doesn't sound like something I want to sign up for.
I mean, if you think about it, what's the average life expectancy? Like 74?
Maybe.
So if you retire at 65, what do you got, 9 years?
Yeah. So you're going to tell me I'm going to work my whole life to have 9 years?
Right.
Like, I'm good.
Right.
Like,
No.
I'll do something else, and I don't want that for anyone here.
Sure.
I don't want that for anybody that works with me. Like, I'm really big also on, like, I don't tell people, like, which it's caused confusion places that I've went, but I don't tell people, like, that person works for me.
Work with you.
Yeah.
That has confused some people before.
It has confused people because
Yeah. They work with you.
everyone works with me. Like, they work with me. They don't work for me. Like, Ricky's his own fucking person.
And see, even for me, like, if you made me puff my chest and play boss, I'm just firing you.
Yeah.
I don't even want to be around you if you're going to make me be that way.
No,
because even, you know, Select would be like, okay, so what was your hiring process? And I'd be like, well, my wife always had a good knack for someone, and anytime she told me she didn't like someone, she was right. So we usually just went to dinner with me and my wife, and if Michelle liked him, I hired him.
Yeah.
You know, and one of the guys was like, I was talking to him on the phone, and I had him on speaker, and she's like, I like him. He sounds cool. And I'm like, and he was great. He was awesome. And he left me to go to KU Med, and we were just heartbroken. You know, we loved the guy. And there was a couple times, 2 times in particular, where my wife met 2 girls, and both times she's like, I don't like them. And I'm like, what do you mean? Shut up. You're out of your mind. Frank, I'm telling you, there's something about both of them I don't like. Both of them sued me.
That's like the best I told you so.
And actually,
she still lives with that. She has like she got business cards. Like, remember so-and-so and so-and-so? I told you so.
And hold on. The funny thing is Michelle's name was on the business. So whenever we got sued, she got sued. She'd get papers served. She'd call me, Frank Termini, what am I getting sued for now? Yeah.
Well, it's pretty funny on I have a lot of people ask on hiring because we've had really no issue with that, which I feel like we've built kind of a different culture, and I feel like culture draws the right people. And they're like, what do you look for? Like, I've had so many people like, what do you look for on a resume? I'm like,
Never read one.
I haven't either.
Never read a resume.
People
they
are
would send it to me. I'm like, I'm not. This is like a whole page.
It's all the same stuff.
There's no pictures. I'm not reading this.
Nothing's
I haven't
important
even
on there.
held a resume since I've started this. And people are like, what kind of background they have or something. I'm like, I know where they're from. Like, where they go to college from? I don't fucking know. Like,
Does it matter?
like, they work their asses off. I'm like, they're willing to learn. Like, if you're always learning, you're always progressing. Like, those are the people I want. And like, I hired a girl this week that when I sat down with her, she's like, do I need to resume, all this stuff? I'm like, no. I talked to her for 30 minutes. I'm like, I like her. I'm like, yeah, she'll do great. I'm like, her demeanor's right. I'm like, people are going to like you. I'm like, I want people, if they come in and I'm not here, most of the time, if I ever have anybody we work with or I'm friends with or anything of that nature shows up here, they're handled 200% just as well as I would, if not better. And then they'll text me afterwards like, you have the greatest group of people around you. Yeah. I'm like, thank you. I'm like, but we have Friendsgiving or our MMG Friendsgiving tomorrow at my house. That everyone's cooking stuff. Everyone's coming over. Like, we have our Christmas party. Like, this has turned into my circle of people.
Sure.
Like, and I don't bring someone in my circle I don't want to be around.
And that's kind of was my thing. Like, can I hang with this person for 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day, right? And if the answer to that question was yeah, then I'm like, yeah, come on, you're on. The only time I'd ever use a resume was just to find out their contact info. I was like, oh, where's the phone number? And then I just call them, and then we'd meet. And, if they came in and they were all, prim and proper, I'm like, nah, you ain't going to work.
No, I've had 2 people show up here, suited up,
yeah, that ain't happening with
like,
you. That's not going to work.
And people come in, like, do you wear jeans and cowboy boots and a hoodie to work? And I'm like,
Usually?
yeah, it's an MMG hoodie. I have, what do you mean? It's got the zip on it. It's a nice one. And most people just look at us like they cannot figure it out. And like all these other marketing companies have, I sat on the other side of the table for a long time. I fucking hated the marketing people who came in.
Yeah.
I get it. They came in. We call them the blue suits. They come in their Porsche and everything, and they're ringed up and all decked out and everything, and they just started with this company like a month ago, and they have the best found marketing on the planet. I'm like, and they're just sitting there trying to hard sell you on a 12-month contract. And anytime you signed up, you didn't hear from that person again for the length of that term of that contract.
Right.
That person's trying to outsell their next 12 months. And it was just like, I hated the business model. I hated everything about it. And I was like, I feel like if I step into this space, I could do something different.
Right.
And once we got in, I felt like we have found that the market's way bigger than we thought. But it's just, I don't know, I think surrounding yourself with the correct people is such a huge factor, because all these people I've surrounded myself with, they have made me 1,000 times better.
Sure.
That I couldn't be more thankful for the people that are around me on what they've done for me.
Right.
On just all 4 fronts.
And seeing in the physical therapy space, if you get somebody for 2 years, that's a long time.
Yeah.
It's this constant, bounce from job to job to job to home health to outpatient to skilled nursing, and they're just constantly chasing this, whether it's more money, whether it's cheaper health insurance, whatever it was, and it was just, oh, I get to spend more time with my patients at this place, well, yeah, right now you do.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you know, it's going to be revenue driven, right?
Yeah.
And you know, the argument for the therapist is always like, well, you know, I'm more concerned about quality of care. And I'm like, okay, well, if your quality of care sucks, how are you going to make any money? You know, so don't, and then as soon as you start talking about money with them, you know, they would kind of posture. They you know, typically physical therapists, they don't like talking about that. You know, and one time, you know, I had an employee, she was like, you know, I just feel like you're all about the money. I'm like, okay. I said, go ahead and work for free then. That's right. You know, here, go ahead, work for free. I said, if it's not about the money, just work for free.
Yeah.
And she said, well, I don't really want to do that. And I'm like, well, it's a little bit about the money then.
Yeah, and that's
you know,
any business owner, like, as much as people hate talking about money,
yeah.
I don't know where it's became this like taboo thing to talk about money. I think it's a very healthy thing to talk about money.
Yeah.
Like, I have never had an argument with Madison about money, and I know so many like relationships that people argue about money and all these things. And like, why don't you guys like have that? I'm like, we talk about it all the time.
Yeah.
Like, we talk about what she is doing to scale her life, what I am doing to scale my life, what we have personally, what our goals are personally, what our goals are business-wise on a financial level.
Right.
And we've always achieved all these like financial goals, and the money's great, but it creates this peace of mind that is there. And it's in business, I feel like it should be it should be talked about all the time. I'm very upfront with people that we work with. We don't work for fucking free.
Well, and my big problem, like, back to your original questions, like some of the obstacles, like I was constantly looking for someone who was motivated by money.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't find it. You know?
And there's a motivation there and a motivation to help people. If you can find somebody that can do those two
can't
things,
help people without making money.
Exactly.
It's a direct correlation.
They run parallel. If you
you know,
figure out how to do that, I don't know, it gets hairy pretty quick because there's some people that only care about money, and it jeopardizes everything they do in business because they become greedy. But I feel like if you can keep from the greed side and you could say, hey, I am helping people, but there's a direct correlation of money that runs with it.
If you cannot make money, I should say this differently. You cannot make money without helping people. It's absolutely impossible, because if you're not helping them, they will not come back in.
Exactly.
And then you will not make any freaking money. Yeah. Okay? So it's really simple. And here, I'll never forget a friend of mine, his dad was a doctor. You know Lenny Patala?
I know the name.
Okay, so his dad, Leonard Patala, was a pediatrician, and I was debating whether I was going to go to med school, whether I was going to go to PT school. It's just back and forth. We were at a wedding one night, and we were talking, and he said, if you're honest and work hard, it is really hard not to be successful. And that has stuck with me. You know, I never treated someone I didn't think I could help.
Yep.
There was plenty of people I turned away because I didn't think it was the right service for them, you know. And at the same time, I was definitely money driven.
Yeah, and I feel like there's a way to be money driven and have financial goals and things to go after of that nature, but still do things in an honest way and take care of people.
Yeah.
And if that's from you doing physical therapy, that is a service to someone. To us doing marketing, that is a service for someone. 99% of the people who came on this podcast have a service for someone.
Right.
And it's how well do you do that? How well is your communication with those people on client or whoever it is? Or you may have the best service ever, but if your communication is terrible with that person all the time, they're like, I tried to book an appointment, it took me like 5 times, it canceled on me, all this other shit. I wouldn't go back. But you fix all these gaps, you make that experience the way it should be. You take care of them properly. The dollars and cents, you can run a premium price. And it's the same thing we brought into the marketing space. We run a premium price. I'm very upfront with people. We are probably the most expensive around.
Get what you pay for.
But you're going to get better communication. You want to text me on a Saturday night at 10 o'clock at night, I'll text you back.
Right.
You want to get in contact with someone all the time, you're going to get in contact with us.
Right.
Do you want the best product hitting out to the public? You're going to get that from us. You're going to get all these things, but you're going to pay a premium for it. And today's market, people want to drive to the cheapest avenue, and they get a cheap product, and they're like, well, I don't want to do that. Like, I don't want to go to a physical therapist because I went to this one guy, he sucked. But it's like, I found the cheapest guy out there. Well, he probably got the cheapest work out there.
Right.
Same thing goes for marketing. People go find the cheapest person. Hey, yeah, I have so-and-so that went to marketing school in 1995, and they're going to run all my marketing. Well, let me know how that works out.
Right.
There's a reason that they're cheap. There's
Well,
a reason they do it on the side.
And honestly, like, I think I had 4 or 5 companies that had come to the table that wanted to buy me, and Select was the one who treated their patients the longest, right? And the director of marketing is like, hey, look, insurance companies are dishing more and more responsibility off on the patient. The patient is paying really good money to come here, and it's getting more and more expensive for them. We have to make this worth their while, and I was like, wow, that to me was really, really impressive, But, they also have, they're a nationwide company, and they're getting I think 30% more than I was getting for providing the exact same service.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a big deal.
And I think a lot of people, I mean, we talked about this probably like, third or fourth podcast we started, racing to the bottom. And too many people, like, everyone's racing to get to the bottom. Like, that's not a race I want to be in.
Right.
Like, when everyone's racing to the bottom, and they're like, well, you should be making this cheaper, you should be making this cheaper, you should be making this cheaper. I come in on a Monday morning meeting, I'm like, hey, I'm going to triple our prices on everything. They're like, what? I'm like, the market deems it.
Sure.
We're going to get better accounts. We're going to get better people we want to work with. And since we've done that, we've weaned off of these accounts of people just kind of making it by, that we've set ourselves up with the right people that are growth driven, that want brand awareness. They want all these big, we're sitting at the table with big factor people. It's because those are the mindset of the people that we're wanting to align with.
Right.
But it was crazy when we made that price shift, how then all of a sudden we would talk to 3 people and 2 people wouldn't buy. But the person we did sell, it was the same amount of money we were getting, but the person that we were working with was the person we're supposed to be working with, and we can give them even a better product because we're working with 1 instead of 3.
Right.
And so it's kind of weird when people look at it that way on scale, but it was crazy where a lot of people think you go raise prices, all of a sudden everything's over. You'd be amazed when you raise prices how you're seeing just as many clients.
Yeah, you're attracting the right personnel.
And the right people are coming in, the new clients, you're getting other right clients and everything.
Well, and the healthcare space, though, you're not picking your price. The insurance companies, here, you can charge whatever you want.
Yeah.
But the insurance company is going to dictate what you're going to get paid.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Which, to me, what is crazy is that, the private practice is getting so much less than the big corporate practice. That's like saying, well, if you owned a liquor store, the government saying, well, you could only sell that bottle of beer for $2, but Hy-Vee could sell it for $4.
Yeah.
So, and that's ultimately what they're doing in the healthcare space.
Yeah.
And so, when I was sitting there talking with my wife, I'm like, how long can we withstand that? How long can we withstand? Because my first clinic was in Liberty, Missouri. I had Cirque, ARC, Select, Pinnacle, Athletico came in from Chicago. I'm trying to think. Those are the big corporate companies, and they're all within a mile of me. You know what I mean? And at the time, I didn't realize it, but once I hired the consultant, it's a consultant, Martin Healthcare, out of Pennsylvania, and they said, Frank, you realize you're struggling to get $80 a visit, and these big companies are getting 110. And I'm like, oh my God, how and then they have so many people that they're getting better health insurance coverage for their employees cheaper. So I got 2 strikes against me now, as far as retention, because I couldn't keep anyone longer than, I know I didn't keep anyone longer than 2 years.
Yeah.
I know I didn't.
I think I'd really, really struggle if I had to I don't know if I would stay in this space if I could hire someone. I didn't think they'd be here in 2 years.
It'd be tough.
Right. And you can guarantee it's not going to happen in the physical therapy space. There's no way, and then you finally get them trained. You finally get them doing what you want them to do and how you want them to do it. And then boom, they're gone.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh my gosh. And I really, really like when Paul Martin came in and started examining my books, he's like, Frank, you ain't going to be open in 6 months if you keep doing this way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so he comes in and he's like, okay, we're going to change how you're doing everything. We had to. What's everyone do when they change things? Left. Every one of them. Gone. See you later. Okay? Get a whole new staff come in. Get them all trained, everything ready to rock and roll, everything going good. Now I hire a guy on site, right? Because one of my big problems was I was so busy treating patients that, Martin Healthcare would give me the playbook, but I couldn't execute it.
Yeah.
Right? So I bring someone in, and now they're going to execute this thing, right? We're going to execute this thing to a T. What's everyone do? Everyone leaves. Again. They all left. Whole nother group of people come in, that I got to hire and that luckily they don't leave all at the same time.
Yeah.
But one by one, they're gone, right? Because you start implementing change. And I'm just like, oh, God, and then, of course, Michelle and I, we had some tragedies at home. We could talk about that if you want. But I was just like, I'm beat up, man. I'm just beat up. I don't want to keep doing this anymore.
Yeah, that's I think on the turnover of people, that would I sit here and I picture my future with every single one of these people that sit here. Like I tell them all the time, like when we sit at a table, it's like where we are going. Like it is a ship with all of us on it. We're out in the ocean. The only way you're getting off is you're jumping out in the water by yourself. Like, right. But it's like I look at this thing as like going somewhere. And we're all heading there.
Yeah,
and it's just like I feel like that's a crazy.
It kind of like in my experience, I always kind of like, let's get somebody in this thing that's got some skin in the game. You know what I mean? Let's if we can get some skin in the game, maybe I can improve my retention. And kind of what I realize is like, they're also pretty risk adverse.
A lot of people don't want to do that because then they're like, what if it fails? Or
right.
What if I want to go somewhere else? That type of thing.
No. And so that was difficult. It really was. So, those were, I could go on and on as far as, and maybe it was just, I wasn't smart enough to troubleshoot, because, here I was doing the marketing, I was treating patients, I was doing accounts payable, I was, your accounts receivable, accounts payable, sales, treating patients.
So you were doing like everything.
Everything. And then finally I had a girl come on that was like God sent, and she was like one of my employees that was ride or die. She was never going to leave. There's no way she would have ever left. She was just awesome, and she took over a lot of it.
Yeah.
She took over a lot of it for me.
I feel like that's one of the first hires that business owners should make is somebody to start handling all the accounting side of things, and the paperwork and not necessarily following up with leads, but that office type stuff. She
did everything except treat patients and do sales and generate new referrals. Everything else was her. And she was awesome. Is awesome. She still works for Select.
Okay, I was going to wonder, the way you phrased that, it sounded like she did leave.
No, she stayed on board with this. And I told Select when, I'm like, because they ask you, like, when in due diligence, they're like, who would you say is one of your key employees? I'm like, you got to keep Heather. If you guys don't keep Heather, you're out of your mind. So, and they were like, well, we could make her a front desk person. I'm like, you're going to waste her at a front desk. I'm like, you can put her wherever you want. I'm just telling you, there's nothing that she can't do, and shoot, they made her, they had a position that they had kind of created where they would have one person that would manage multiple sites administrative staff, and that's kind of what Heather does now. You know, but she was an absolute rock star. You know, she's an absolute rock star.
So did she send in a resume, or how did she end up there?
No, it was a friend of a friend type deal. I never read it. I told you,
I know.
So no resume. She was just, you know, she just came in, and me and her had a conversation. I think she dropped a couple F-bombs. I'm like, you're in.
These are my people.
I'm like, yeah, you're in. You're all right with me, you know. So yeah, that's kind of how that worked, you know. And I got I have a good staff right now. You know, I have a good staff right now for my 2 clinics, you know. But like I said, who knows how long you get to keep them, you know.
I know you touched on something else there. If you want to talk about that, you can.
Sure.
If not, I cut this out. Roll with it.
No, I brought it up because I don't know how it came up. I don't even remember. I've been rambling.
I know it's something that it wasn't something I don't know. I don't know how to even
go ahead
navigate those waters. Like I don't. But you've had tragedy, and I know that you and I know you and Michelle have been big on advocating change and that, and people having knowledge on it. And I think that's where, if more people can have a, I don't know, insight on that.
So my first child, he would be 27. So he passed away from a brain tumor. It was 2 weeks after his 5th birthday. So he would have been the oldest of all of them.
So I didn't even know that.
Right. So he would have been the oldest of all of them. And so then I met Michelle. Ross Joseph was probably 11. Nina was probably 9. And then Michelle and I had Gianna, and then the twins, Frankie and Gemma. And so I got the privilege to assist with raising Ross Joseph and Nina. I mean, their dad was like super, super involved. You know, just a great guy. You know, the only flaw he would probably have was like he just did too much. He was just one of them guys that just do anything for his kids.
Yeah.
You know, but you know, Nina was with us half the time. You know, so she was like my daughter. You know, Ross Joseph's like my son. You know, if you're going to be a good step parent, you got to treat them like you would like your own kids. You know,
100%.
and you know, I got really, really close to both of them, obviously. And Nina just, I know you've heard the story. It's almost cliche, unfortunately. Young girl thinks she's taking a pain pill, and it was fentanyl.
Yep.
And she passed away. So that was like, you know, my second child, losing my second child, you know. And, I mean, you know, she's part of my life for, she was 21 when she died. So 12 years.
Yeah.
You know, and after losing her, I was just like, every little thing that you might just think was mundane just seemed amplified.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it just seemed amplified. And so initially, Martin Healthcare, you know, they came to me, they had some offers. I'm like, you know, I don't want, I'm not selling it for that. You know what I mean? I'm not selling it for that. And then after Nina died, me and my wife looked at each other and we were like, man, what are we doing? You know, what are we doing right now? And we went back to Martin Healthcare and we were like, you know what? I think we want to entertain this. You know, I think this is something we want to look at. And then when they came back with the second set of offers, like the interest rates went way, way down. You know, this is part of like what I think like God taking care of me, which is, you know, what he did throughout this whole entire thing. I mean, and the offers like tripled, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm like, really? You know, I'm like, is this real life? And she's like, yeah. She's like, this is the multipliers they're getting right now. And I'm like, where do I sign?
Yeah.
You know?
Should have showed me that the first time.
Well, so it was literally like 10 months.
Really?
Yeah, probably 10 months between the initial set of offers and then, you know, we just kept running the business, and, you know, Nina had passed And then it was probably, Nina died in June, and we didn't get another offer until October. And that's when we were like,
I feel like when things like that, and like, I mean, I don't know what those feelings are. I don't know what the emotions are that come with that. But I feel that business almost becomes irrelevant at that point.
I didn't care if it burnt down.
Yeah.
I didn't. And I never was like that. I didn't go to work. Well, here, I was in the damn hospital for the day after Nina died. I could kind of laugh at it now. I was in the hospital. My blood pressure was 180 over 110. And the nurse is going, well, just check it in 10 minutes, and it keeps going up. And my anxiety's now going up. And finally I said, lady, this blood pressure ain't going to go down. And I wasn't going to say anything, but I said, I buried my stepdaughter yesterday, right? Yeah. Okay, my blood pressure isn't going down, I promise you. And so my wife comes in, and now she's taking zero shit at this point.
Yeah.
She's like, go get him something and get him something now. And so then the nurse comes back, and she's got a needle, and she IVs me, and she goes, I want to just check your blood pressure one more time before I give this to you. And so now I know it's psychological, because right before she gave me, it was Versed, which is like Valium on steroids. Right before she gave it to me, my blood pressure dropped. And it's because I knew I had help on the way. Yeah. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So now I had the wherewithal to know, okay, I'm not going crazy here. This is strictly a stress response to what's happened to me, and shit, she gave me that shot, took my blood pressure 5 minutes later, and it was immediately like 110 over 70. I mean, immediately,
Yeah.
And then he gave me an oral muscle relaxer, and I went home and slept for like 3 days.
Yeah.
I didn't move, and I needed it.
Oh,
I mean, it was probably one of the most anxiety-ridden experiences of my life. I am not scared of many things. I am scared of anxiety. I feel for people that battle that all the time. Because like with my son, it was different. I had 10 months to kind of wrap my head around the fact that, because they told us immediately at Children's Mercy, they didn't pull no punches. He had a brain tumor. It was on his brainstem. And they said most kids with this diagnosis don't make it a year. He made it 10 months. So with him, it was almost like a sigh of relief when he passed. Yeah. If you can imagine that. I mean, it probably sounds terrible to hear someone say that, but it was, to watch him suffer and go through all that shit, especially when they don't quite understand what's going on. I mean, it was brutal, But then with Nina, I mean, when they're here one minute and your wife's going over there with your 3 kids and you're going to go get a pedicure, and she calls, and I was actually in a meeting that day, and she called me. She goes, bring me some food home. I said, that's fine. So I'm driving home, and she calls me, and I said, I'm pulling in the driveway. I got your food. She goes, don't come over here. She goes, come over Nina's. And I said, what's the matter? She said, well, Life 360 has her at home, and I know her car's here. I see her car, but she's not answering her door. And I hear my 3 little ones are with her. And the 3 little ones, I hear them pounding on her door. And I'm like, oh, God, this isn't good. I just had this gut-wrenching feeling that was so bad that I couldn't even speed over there. I couldn't even rush over there. I could barely even breathe. And she had got the maintenance guy to let her in, and she called me back, and then, she was hysterical. And, so when I had got there, I just wanted to, like, protect the 3 little ones. I'm like, man, I hope she had the wherewithal not to let them go in that room with her, which she did, thank God. And some neighbors had heard my wife, because she lived in an apartment complex. Some neighbors had heard my wife, and they came and grabbed the kids. Well, when I pulled up, the kids just ran to my car, and I just kind of kept them in my car. But, I mean, hell, I had to call my mother, tell my mother what happened. I had to go see my mother-in-law, tell my mother-in-law what happened, call my sister-in-law, tell her what happened. I mean, it was awful. It was the most anxiety-ridden, horrific. And this is all before I even seen my wife, because I had to take care of the kids first. I didn't want to bring the kids up there, And so my kids had to see my response to that. They had to see their mother's response to it. My mother, Nina's biological dad, they call him Daddy Ross, and they had to see his response to that, because especially Gianna's like super close to Nina and Ross Joseph's dad. To tell you the type of guy he is, Nina and Ross Joseph would make Gianna call Ross when they wanted something. Because he just can't say no to her.
Yeah.
So they would always make Gianna call Daddy Ross and get X, Y, and Z, and then Gianna would call him. And then they had to see his response to that. So it was really is still. It's a difficult path to walk. It's a difficult path to walk. And as an alpha male, which as you're an alpha male. Most business owners are alpha males. When your wife and kids hurt and there ain't shit you can do about it, that's humbling.
I think it's probably one of the hardest things. And like I said, I've experienced nothing to that level, but just like Madison is somebody that doesn't handle things the way I handle things. Like when elderly people pass, I don't I know it sounds terrible, but I don't have a problem with it.
Right.
If they live a full life, I feel like, when I went to high school with people that I have a lot of guys I went to high school with that aren't here anymore.
Sure.
And it's from very similar type things. And it's like, you want to see me go break down, like, see me at those spots.
Sure.
And it's like they didn't get the full chance.
Sure.
And I just think it's one of those things, like when Madison's grandma passed, it was one of those things that I couldn't do anything. Like, she gets a call and she just breaks down. Like, what? I have nothing to do. Like, I don't.
And so me personally, I'm the one who will get emotional way before my wife will. You know what I mean? So when she was broken like that, it was so difficult for me to watch.
Yeah.
It was so difficult. And then especially to not be able to do anything for her. What do you do? You can't even say anything.
I know, that's where it's like, it's one of those things that I have no words for it.
Yeah. And it's like, my first son's mother, she never really got over it.
Yeah.
And you never really, you don't ever really get over it, but a male can't feel what they feel.
No.
You can't.
And I know, like I said, I have a lot of friends that I went to high school with that aren't here, and like their parents are people that I knew before that, and they have ever been changed.
For sure.
And it's
for sure.
It keeps Mass and I tell her, I'm like, I don't know if we talk about having kids. Like, if something of ever taking on that forefront, I'm like, I don't.
Here, I love my kids. I love being married. I love my kids. Would I have kids right now in this day and age? I don't know, man.
Dude, I don't know where the world's going. I don't know. A lot of things are happening. Like, there's so many unknown factors now.
This world, just in the last 10 years,
as
fucking crazy.
Oh, 100%.
I say 10 years. It's really since COVID that I've really noticed it.
The last 2.5 years has been.
I'm like, what? I feel like I'm in the twilight zone sometimes. Here, all of a sudden, when we were kids, if you were a drug addict and you overdosed, it's like, well, you were playing with fire, right? If you were a gangbanger and you got shot, it's like, okay, if you're going to live that lifestyle, nowadays you got kids that aren't drug addicts dying of overdoses, right? Had no idea what they were getting. You got kids that just all of a sudden go crazy and just come in with AR-15s and just start shooting people. It's like, what the fuck is going on?
I think the medical space as a whole has went just awry.
Yeah.
You look at the stuff that's out there that my dad had a pulmonary embolism. I don't know, when I was in freshman year of college, and it put him in the hospital, and they were pumping him with so many different meds. And I show up there, I drive back from college, I get there, and they're like, they were surprised that he survived. I get there, and he's like on this bed, and they have him leaned up, and he looks at me, he's like, "Are you getting that deck finished this weekend?" I was like, I'll have it done. So I'm at the hospital, going home, stripping this deck in the dark, getting this whole deck done around the house, because he's like, work still has to get done. He's like, they can all hang out here, but he's like, I know you're going to be the one that gets everything done.
Right.
He goes, if I'm not there, you still have to get it all done. And then finally, they like keep pumping him with this stuff. And he's there for like 4 or 5 days, and they put him on these fentanyl patches.
Yeah.
And what it did to him, and he was on them for like 12 months, and he didn't really even know what it was. This was still like early days of that being a thing. And they had him on these, like, I would be lying if I knew the exact milligrams of them. But
micrograms. They're not giving him no milligrams.
or whatever they were giving him, like, it was and his tolerance kept getting higher and higher and higher, so it kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And he would call and leave me, like, voicemails at night, like, when I was in college. It just made no sense. And, like, his head just wasn't working right. I'm like, what is going on? And then he'd be, like, pissed at me for, like, a week for no reason.
Yeah.
Like, and it was people at work with him, they're like, what is going on? And I'm like, and finally one day he's like, he started doing research on fentanyl, and he's like, they give this to cancer patients.
So I can speak on it from a variety of different angles, right? Because when I had my shoulder replaced, it got infected, okay? And they had to take the shoulder out and put a spacer in. And then I was on IV antibiotics for 6 weeks. Well, one of the antibiotics they gave me caused this horrific reaction where I had these terrible muscle pains and joint pains. They had to wheel me into the ER in a wheelchair. And the doctor takes one look at me, grabs my PICC line, loads me up with fentanyl, and all my pain goes away. No, I didn't go to sleep. I was like, holy shit, this is great. You know, I'm like, I got to go take a leak. I'm like, I'm going to go to the bathroom. He goes, really? I said, yeah, I feel great. You know, I mean, all my pain went away. You know, but it came back an hour later.
Yep.
So then they keep me there. I was there 3 or 4 nights. And the nurse is like, I'm going to give you another shot of fentanyl, and then I'm going to give you 2 10-milligram oxycodones. I'm like, whoa, wait a second. And, of course, Michelle's like, just take it. You're fine, you know. And because she just probably wanted me to go to sleep, so I'd leave her alone. She goes, yeah, you're fine. She goes, the fentanyl will wear off in an hour, and the oxy will kick in. I'm like, fuck it. Go ahead, you know. Give it to me. And so now they're giving me this, you know, every 4 to 6 hours. And it works real fast and goes away real fast.
Yeah.
And so finally I'm like, you ain't giving me that shit no more. I'm like, that's just, that works too good, too fast, no way.
There's too much of that stuff out in the world now that, and it's everywhere. Like they were talking about, they've now started doing like these like fentanyl tabs that look like candy.
Well, so they were giving me 100 micrograms in the hospital IV, and it would put me into next week. Okay. So when Nina had passed and they did the toxicology report, and only fentanyl was in Nina's system, right? So now the Department of Homeland Security picks this case up, right? Because let's say that there was all other kinds of different shit in her system, right? Now it's too easy for a defense attorney to shit all over your case because they could say, well, was it really fentanyl that killed her, right?
Yeah.
But that wasn't the case with Nina. The only thing that was in Nina's system was fentanyl. So we sat down with the Department of Homeland Security, and he was like, this is a Homeland Security issue. He's like, all fentanyl is coming through Mexico from China, period. He said, this is 100% because I was really shocked that to hear from I was kind of like, when I got a call from the Department of Homeland Security, I was like, holy shit, what did I do? You know, I'm like, 'cause we didn't know.
Yeah.
You know, they just, Michelle and I went down, and we were sitting there talking to the guy, and he was like, you know, telling us what's going on. And, you know, he had, you know, they dumped her phone. They had done all kinds of due diligence already. And so what's happening, they're not really, because I was under the assumption that they were taking, you know, your typical, whether it be a Xanax, whether it be an oxycodone, and they would add fentanyl to it.
Yeah.
Well, that's not what they're doing. What they're doing is they're taking fentanyl and baking soda or whatever other type of powder substance that they want to mix with it, and they're just putting it in a pill presser and stamping M30 on it, right? So there's no oxycodone in these pills at all. That's all it is fentanyl. That's it, you know. And they're not really being sophisticated when they're, you know, they don't know what's going in it. They're just sitting there putting it in a pill presser. Here, they make 6,000 of them an hour. One pill presser will make 6,000 counterfeit pills per hour.
Yeah.
There's more between 18 and 25 years of age. Fentanyl kills more people than suicide and car wrecks.
I bet more than COVID too.
And more than COVID, 100%.
Yeah.
More than COVID. So what's the real issue?
I don't think we're really focusing on the real issue.
No. And you know what else the Department of
age.
Homeland Security told me? The only time the cost of drugs went up in this country is when they were building the wall.
Yeah.
That's it. You can argue with it or not. And I don't know. That's what the guy came in my house and said to us. The only time the cost of drugs went up in this country was when the wall was getting built on our southern border.
Yeah, and I think you have to figure out, and I mean, they're not going to do anything on them. We can talk on the M3 podcast all we want about stopping drugs coming into the United States, and it's going to make no impact. There's too much money in it. But it's crazy on how fast it's elevating, which it is something that I feel like when I was in 5th grade, shit like this didn't happen. I feel like when I was coming up, like it was very rare to see it. And now it's like, it's becoming something that's so much more common that
so interesting. My brother's a captain for the Kansas City Fire. You ever met Andrew?
I think I had.
Andrew's at the gym all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he's a captain for the Kansas City Fire Department.
Does he drive the white Denali?
No, he drives a truck. He drives a pickup truck. It's not a Denali.
No. Okay.
So he actually ran Nina's call, believe it or not. Talk about bad luck.
Yeah.
But so he ran that call, and he tells me he has to give someone Narcan every single day, and they could get it from marijuana, they're getting it from what they think is a Xanax, they're getting it from what they think is a oxycodone, they're getting it from what they think is a hydrocodone. I mean, any type of pill out there, they can get it from. You know, and the funny thing is, which I was really shocked, because when I was talking to the detective at the Department of Homeland Security, I'm like, you know, if I'm a drug dealer, I don't want to kill my clients, right? There's less people that I can buy drugs from me. Okay, that's where my brain goes. And he's like, when someone overdoses on these drug dealers' product, the junkies flock to them.
They think it's better.
Really?
They think it's better. I couldn't believe it. So they're willing to sacrifice. So sacrificing a person to them is just advertisement.
Yeah.
It's just advertisement. You know? And then and the weird thing about this is, like I was saying earlier, you know, now you got kids. I mean, here, I'll be honest. How many times after a football game I'd go up to a buddy like, who's got a damn pain pill?
Yeah.
You know, your whole body hurts.
Uh-huh.
You know, who's got a pain pill?
Which it was like crazy. Like when I was in high school, I knew a lot of guys that like did that. And it was one of those deals that I don't know what like triggered in my head. Like I never did that kind of stuff. I've drank. I started drinking at a young age. Like Ricky's never had a sip of alcohol.
Right.
Like Ricky doesn't do that. Like, but it was one of those things that I just didn't. I don't know. I didn't have a. I feel like my dad's told me he's done everything under the sun, and he's like, learn from my mistakes. Don't do these stupid things. He goes, you'll thank me later.
Yeah.
And it was just something I didn't have a desire to do. I'm like, I enjoy drinking. Like, it's not like I'm alcoholic. Sometimes I'll go a couple weeks without drinking. We were talking earlier. If I work hard enough in a day and I deserve it, then I deserve it. If I don't, I don't. Yeah. But it's like I never had desire for pain meds. Like we grew up in racing motorcycles. I broke 17 bones racing motorcycles. Our dad wouldn't let us take pain pills.
Yeah.
And it was just the only time we got to take pain meds was my brother broke his back, broke 7 vertebrae, 6 ribs. He was a vegetable for 6. Like he really was. He was in a back brace and lost almost 100 pounds. Like it was just skin and bones. Like, but he took pain meds then. But that's the only time we ever really had pain. Like,
and you know, when my first ACL reconstruction, I took pain pills. Man, I took them for probably 2 months, and then when I was done, I was just done. I don't remember feeling like I was having withdrawals or like I wanted them or anything like that. So it just never crossed my mind. I guess maybe I was too what's the word I'm looking for? I was too focused on getting back on the field.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? To ever feel like I was addicted.
Yeah.
And I was taking them, like it said every 4 to 6 hours. I was taking them every 4 to 6 hours. I mean, that son of a bitch hurt. You know what I mean? To the point where the trainer had came up to me. He's like, I fractured my hip and I only took 4 pain pills. He took my damn pain pills from me. And I was like, go ahead, take them. Whatever. I ain't going to argue. I didn't care. I never, but to your point, you don't get to make those mistakes nowadays.
No.
It's way harder to be a kid nowadays than it was, when we were kids. Because I remember, we'd be on the bus. Who's got a hydrocodone? Give me one. Shit, my whole body hurts. Take it. You can't do that.
Nowadays, you do that on a football bus. I mean, 4 people aren't getting off of it.
Good. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
If you did that same thing, there's people that aren't getting off that bus.
So here, so Michelle now actually goes around, and this detective will have Michelle speak to young kids. And today Michelle spoke to the 6th, 7th, and 8th graders at St. Andrews. And the stat that the detective put up there, I thought I was just baffled by it. 42%. 42% of counterfeit pills have 2 milligrams or more fentanyl in it, which is a lethal dose. 42%. That is astronomical. It's almost 50-50. It's worse than Russian roulette. I mean,
It is.
And it's a shame because, you could be even a drug addict's not necessarily a bad kid. They can't help it if they got addicted. I mean, it was stupid trying it, but how many kids experiment with drugs?
Yeah.
It shouldn't be. The punishment don't fit the crime.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I'm not advocating like, hey, you should be able to experiment with drugs, but it just, the punishment just doesn't seem to fit the crime anymore.
But it's also like I look at like my dad's age group.
They'd all be dead.
Exactly. Like you look at he tells me stories. I'm like, you can't do that shit now.
No, even me. Like here, I'm 16 years older than you, and so when I was in my 20s, when football was over, so like, okay, I had my last surgery in October of 1998. My son got diagnosed with the brain tumor in June of 99 and died April of 2000. So in 18 months, the 2 things that I identified myself as, dad and football player, were gone. Right? They were gone. So now I'm just a student that I don't have to go to weights. I don't have to go to film. I don't have my son that's going to occupy my time. I had all kinds of extra time. And as you can imagine, I did not fill it. I did not fill it the right ways. And I did have those conversations with the 2 older ones, because you know how it is. There's like with me, with my dad, there was a lot of things I wouldn't go to my dad with.
Yeah.
I had uncles that I would go to with that shit. You know what I mean? And so with Ross, Joseph, and Nina, there were some things I ain't going to go talk to my dad about this, because, they would come talk to me.
Which my dad, I mean,
little did they know I was going to tell them their dad anyway.
Yeah. My dad, like, I don't know, push those uncomfortable conversations a lot of times where it was like, my dad's like, if you're drinking, things like that, just do not get behind the wheel of a car. Like, that is what I ask. And he's like, I know that you're going to try it. I know you're going to do these things. Like, but it's also like my dad worked really hard. Like, I never saw my dad drink until I was in college.
I've never seen my dad drunk.
Yeah.
I never saw him drunk one time. I never saw him drink. Nor my mom one time.
But like all growing up, he was just like, I'm not going to have you around like a drunk or me drinking alcohol all the time. Which he's like, if you choose to drink alcohol when you get older, that's perfectly fine. He's like, but in college he would drink with us, like after we became of age and things like that. But even when we were younger, he told us like, I know you're going to do these things. Just be smart. And it was always being like honest with him. He goes, if you're always honest with me, you'll never be in trouble. Right. But if you're dishonest with me, that's how you're going to get in trouble. Yeah. So it's like, there was times that I'm like, this isn't going to be a fun phone call to have. And my brother, I mean, he stacked up a lot more unfun phone calls than I did. Right. But it's like, when he made those calls, I was like, oh, bro. But my dad would be pissed at the moment. But it was also like, my he was always very honest.
Yeah.
And he crashed a lot of shit, fucked up a lot of stuff, like did Dre doing Dre things. But
my dad was super conservative, you know what I mean? So there was just certain things. I mean, I had a very good relationship with my dad, you know, but there was just certain things I knew he just wasn't going to understand.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I had my Uncle Jim's like super morally compromised. You know what I mean? So I was always like, oh, I'm hammered. You got to come get me. You know, and then he would come get me. You know, so but Ross Joseph and I, you know, that's the cool thing about being a stepdad is you can actually be their friend.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. But it's also like extremely hard too. It's harder than being a parent.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of times there's a spot for a friend, and like I'm friends with my dad.
Yeah,
but there's a spot to be a dad too, and like be a figure that you look to.
Right.
I feel like sometimes I see people that. Once again, some of these people that I went to high school with, that they had the best friends in the world, that at that point I'm like, I wish my dad like was boozing with me and like doing all this stuff. Like these people seem way cooler.
Yeah.
And I'm like, my dad would yell at me, but then like when you go into that, it was like, no, my dad at that point knew that being a father figure was more important.
Yeah, you need to be a man first.
Yeah.
You know, you need to be a man first before you do that. And you know, I think. Like sometimes when like my biological kids were, you know, they're much younger than Ross, Joseph, and Nina. I think, you know, Gianna's 11 and Nina would be 20. So they're 11 years apart, right? And then Gianna and Ross Joseph would be 13 years apart. So I'm coming home and I'm hugging and kissing these babies, and then I'm going to my teenagers and, you know, I'm getting in their ass for something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And when the teenagers are your stepkids, you know, they're thinking, well, he's always getting in my ass, you know, but he's and I'm like, you know, there's an age gap, you know, I'm going to be just as hard on them when they're your age. Well, then my nephew, he turns 12, 13 and gets bitten by the asshole bug. You know what I mean? And then they see me getting in his ass too. Right?
Oh, shit, I don't want to grow up.
So now my stepkids are like, well, he just does that to anyone that he cares about. You know, and they started to receive it a little bit better.
Yeah.
You know, because initially they thought, well, he's just being an asshole. You know, we're his stepkids. You know, and then when my nephew, you know, turned 13 and, you know, needed some discipline.
Yeah.
They seen, well, okay, that's just the way he is with everyone he cares about, you know. And then Nina would like, Giorgio, I know how he is. Let me just tell you how to handle him. You know what I mean? So, you know, that I was actually fortunate. That kind of helped. It helped improve my relationship with my stepkids, you know. It was kind of a fortunate accident when Giorgio started to act up. I mean, he was easy to straighten up. You know, it's all you had to do was just balance his testosterone a little bit.
Yeah.
And then he was like, okay. And he was totally.
My dad just pretty much humbled me. Like,
yeah,
you better know your fucking spot on the totem pole, and I'm still a lot bigger than you. He's like, and I puffed up to my dad one time in my life, and just testosterone flowing, like senior in high school.
Yeah.
Lifting twice a day. And I thought nobody could take me on.
Yeah.
And my dad comes into my room. My brother gets in my face. I headbutt my brother. We were getting into it. He pushed me in the door, blah, blah, blah. And he's got a bloody nose. My dad comes in. And he's like, you want to fuck with someone? You fuck with someone your own size. Gets in my face. I'm like, okay. And I like puff up my chest. He grabs me by one hand, puts me up on the wall. And my feet are like this far off the wall. And I'm like, I'm sitting there. I can't breathe. And I'm like, he's going to kill me on the wall right now. And I'm thinking about it. I'm like, how is he holding me? I'm like 215 pounds at the time.
Man strength.
I'm like, how is he holding me up right now with one hand? Like, and yelling at me at the same time. Like, he's not out of breath, nothing.
Yeah.
And then like tosses me across the room like a child. And he's like, get up. And I'm like, I'm on the ground. I'm like, I'm staying here. I'm like, but it was just one of those things that was pretty humbling at that time. That
you need it.
And at that, very much so that you have to be put back where you're supposed to be. And like, I always knew that he, like, even when I was in college, I came home, Madison's like, you need to say this to your dad or whatever. I'm like, yeah, you say that. And like, so Madison and my dad like butted heads a lot in the beginning. And she's like, well, you went out and worked on this all day and everything. Like, are you gonna get like paid anything? Like, I had no money. And she's like, you don't get paid for that? I was like, he tells me that's what I get for having a roof over my head. And he buys the food. Like, I'm not going to balk at getting food and water and a place to live.
Right.
Well, I don't have any money. We can't go anywhere else.
Yeah.
You got better ideas?
So my dad was like, he was super passive until he wasn't. Right. And then it was like, if you pushed him to that point, it was like, oh man, shame on you. Yeah. You know, and Andrew and I pushed him to that point a couple times, you know. Andrew got more beatings than I did. I knew better.
Yeah.
You know, Andrew got more beatings than I did, for sure. But, you know, and so Giorgio, you know, he caught that wrath of my, you know, so my brother and me, you know, so he kind of gets the, like a double-edged sword. You know, he probably wishes we'd just leave his ass alone. You know.
One of the things, I mean, I feel like we could sit here and talk for like 5 hours.
We could.
And I'm going to probably have this cut up to where it hits like, I think we drop a part 1 and a part 2. Next, whenever.
Really? They're that short?
What?
How long have we been here?
We've been here for like an hour and a half. I don't know, probably hour and 45 right
Really?
now.
Has it been that long? My wife's going to be pissed.
Yeah. I already got Massey text me. She's like, you coming home one of these days?
Oh,
like,
here she is texting
Yeah.
me. What does this say? Let's just watch this.
We're just going to hit with 2 parts. I like it.
Oh, this is something about Christmas. I can't deal with that. And it's going to cost me money. I don't want to deal with that right now.
So one of the things that we kind of wrap up the podcast with all the time, which is probably like the most loaded question we ask, is if you could go back to your 20-year-old self, what would you tell yourself?
If I could go back to my 20-year-old self, there'd be a couple things. One thing I wish I would have done was hang on every word my dad said. You know, that would probably be that'd be the one thing I would really, really do is hang on everything that he said, because, you know, like I said, I was 30 by the time I realized he knew everything.
Yeah.
And then I was 34 when he passed, you know. So there's so many times I find myself in situations, even now, 10 years later, like, man, I wish I could call him and get his advice on this, you know. And the other thing that I would probably try to embed into my head is, if you have problems that money can solve, you don't have any problems.
Yeah.
You know, those are probably, you know, the 2 things I would try to condition myself to, because it's easy for me to say that to you right now.
Yeah. And I mean, I ask a lot of people that question. I mean, it's vastly different.
You know,
and
it's easy for me to sit, and it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
It does. It's like,
yeah,
if it's money, yeah, don't worry about it. And that shit will keep you up.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, for nights on end.
I very much, I view money way differently than most people. And I think it's where it doesn't stress me out, is I look at money as 100% as a tool.
Right.
Like, it is nothing but a tool. It is a leverage tool that it makes it to where 2 people can have different amounts of money. They can eat at different restaurants. So they drive 2 different cars to get them A to B, like live in 2 different houses, both which keep rain off of them. It is a tool that leverages at a different point. That is all it is. Like, I don't know, like, a lot of things I view on is how people lived 200, 250 years ago compared to us now, where people were bartering and trading for things, and money isn't what it is now.
Right.
It wasn't the same as it is now 60 years ago.
Right.
Like,
right.
So it's one of those things that it's going to be completely different in another 40, 50 years. There may be a day where there's going to be a day where it's all digital funds on our phone.
I never have cash on me.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, I had $100 bill. I must have asked my wife for it.
Yeah. She gives out hundreds. We need to get over there.
And I couldn't spend it.
Yeah.
You'd go up to people like, oh, we don't have change for that. We don't have change for that. We don't have enough change in the restaurant. I had this $100 bill. I'm like, I was burning a hole in my damn pocket.
Yeah, I want to spend it.
I gotta go find something that's gonna cost me $100. You know, but you're right. It's gonna be. But the problem with that is, and this is a whole nother conversation that we can get into. But when you're listening like Dave Ramsey, you should listen to him if you haven't. There's a psychological component to paying cash for something, because you're giving something up in order to get it, right? But when you pay with your debit card or your phone, you hand them your debit card and they hand you the debit card back. So that psychological component of something for something is not there.
Yeah, and I very much have always been I keep a lot of heavy cash on hand.
Yeah.
I'm not real sure why, but I've just always liked to have cash. Like I use cash.
And you should.
It's something that I also write checks. Like I have a checkbook, and I'm probably the only 28-year-old that loves my checkbook like I do, but it's kind of weird. But it's very old school, and it's one of those things that I know is going to go into the wind in the next probably 5 to 10 years.
Sure.
But it's, I don't know. Once again, money is just a tool. It is what it is. It's numbers. That there's people that have billions of dollars out there that all it is their bank account has zero. If we could figure out how to hack our bank account, just move it and drop an extra zero with a keyboard. Like I don't stress on money. I even when I had no money, I didn't stress on money. I didn't want to live that way. I knew that.
Honestly, when I was busted in college, I mean, I put my head on the pillow, no problem. The key is what'll change that for you is when you have kids.
Yeah. I have been told that a lot.
That's going to change it for you, right? Because you want to put them in a position, where they could be successful, and unfortunately, money has a big part in that. Yeah. And while I say out of one corner of my mouth, hey, listen, if you got problems that money can solve, you don't have any problems. I'll also say, if you're mentally and physically healthy, money will buy the shit out of happiness.
No, that's
that's assuming you're mentally and physically healthy, and your family is mentally and physically healthy.
Yeah, it can buy a lot of things. It takes off a lot of other factors. Like I said, the luxury of this is because I was financially stable.
Yeah,
to where there's a lot of plus factors that come with money. So there's definitely that.
If like me telling you, you're in a good situation, you're doing really, really well, you're going to continue to do really, really well, I'd rat hole as much as you can before you have any kids. I mean, Michelle was 40, getting ready to turn 41 by the time we had the twins. So the twins were born October the 16th. Michelle turned 41 December the 6th. So it was less than 2 months away before she turned 41 when we had and the twins are our last ones. So I started dating Michelle. I was probably 30 or 31. I can't remember. And then we had Gianna. I was 33, right? So, and I had no financial stability. I had just opened up a business.
Yeah.
So here I am opening up businesses, having kids, starting businesses, starting a family. I kind of had a ready-made, not kind of, had a ready-made family because she already had 2 kids, Yeah. But, and their dad would always be like, hey, look, I don't want you paying for anything for the kids. He was funny about that.
Yeah.
He didn't, like one time I paid for one of Ross Joseph's prescriptions and he gave me a check for it and I ripped it up and he was pissed. He's like, he was just funny about that. He didn't want, which I respected.
I very much respect that as like a father figure that's willing to I feel like that is something as a father when you have a child I feel like too many people you take on the finances of that. Like my dad's the same way. Growing up, we were well off, but I'd never we worked our asses off.
Sure.
He did that.
Yeah.
But it was never I didn't have to worry about getting clothes for school.
No.
I didn't have to worry about that stuff, which is, it's crazy because there are kids out there that have
that's a legitimate concern,
a complete opposite problem. And I'm not going to say I had those issues.
Yeah, I didn't either. I was lucky. I was fortunate.
I was very fortunate on that forefront, and
we just lost a camera.
Did we lose a camera?
Man, how was my hair anyway?
Yeah,
all right,
your hair looks good.
Look,
did we lose it? Did we lose it to fully dying?
I think it might have been the Sony.
The middle one?
Huh.
How did you know we lost it? How can you tell?
It beeped.
It
went ding.
I didn't
all right.
hear it.
I guess the camera's going to cue us out.
Right.
So we're gonna have to say that's the M3 podcast.
Hey, listen, thanks so much. This was awesome.
Thank you for being on.
This was awesome. I mean, I had a great time. This was fun.
Very much appreciate it. And
yeah,
we're gonna break it up in 2 parts. We'll have 2 parts drop. And once again, I'm very, very, very thankful that you came on here. And
yeah, this was. I was honored to be asked, and this is cool.
Yeah, very cool.
This is cool.
So that's gonna be it for the M3 podcast.
Awesome.
We're out.
Thanks for listening to the M3 Podcast. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. Want to learn more? Check us out on Instagram at Moss Marketing Group, on Facebook at Moss Marketing 58, or on our website at mossmarketinggroup.com.